So in this video, we'll be continuing with ratio and proportion, focusing on ratios and working out knowing one part and finding another. So when working with a ratio question, it's really important you establish what type of ratio question it is. So are you writing a ratio? Are you simplifying a ratio or writing it in terms of 1 to n or n to 1? Are you writing a ratio as a fraction or vice versa? Are you showing an amount using a ratio, or are you knowing one part and trying to find another? Now there are other variations of ratio questions you might get asked, but I would say the ones you can see on your screen are probably the ones that you're most likely to face in a maths exam. So it's really important that you establish what type of question it is simply by reading the question carefully and looking out for such keywords. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at knowing when you're given the value of one part and you're trying to find the value of another, or the total. So let's have a look at a particular question or an example just to get started with. So here we've got that it says that a class has a ratio of 5 to 3 girls to boys. If there are 20 girls, how many boys are in the class? Now with this particular question, you can see that here I've got my ratio, which is here. And I know that there are 20 girls, so I've not been given the total, and I've been asked to work out the value of the other amounts, in this case the other amount being the boys. Now in terms of the tips that we need to work out this particular question is to follow the following steps. So step 1 is write and label the ratio. So here I've got the ratio of 5 to 3, and I'm going to label this as the first one is mentioned is the girls. And the second is the boys. Now again, it's really important that you establish that the order in which the ratio is given is the same order as it's going to be labelled in the question as well. So here what I know is that the boys equal 3 parts and the girls equal 5 parts. So that's just me reading the question of what I've written down here. Now the next thing it then tells me to do, or step 2, is to write directly underneath the amount of the part given. So I know that there are 20 girls, so I know that this amount here is 20, and it's the boys which is what I'm trying to work out. So I know that the girls' 5 parts is worth 20. So the next thing I've then got to do is compare these two amounts. So 5 parts equals 20. So if 5 parts equals 20, then 1 part is going to equal 4. So then and with this golden bit of information of 1 part equals 4, I can then work out how many boys there are. So if boys equal 3 parts and 1 part is 4, so then it equals 3 times 4, so therefore there are going to be 12 boys, and there is my final answer. So it's important that you establish, again, kind of similar to what we discussed when we were showing a whole amount using a ratio, is you're working out how many parts we are for that particular section and working out the value and using that to work out the value of 1 part. Now even though the sort of genres of the ratio might be completely different, the quantity of each of the parts is going to be the same, and that's one of the most important aspects of ratios that you need to remember, is that the part value is going to be the same even though the sort of items or whatever we're looking at is going to be different. So let's have a look at another question. So here what we've got, it says that a car park is split in the ratio of 2 to 3 to 20 of disabled, parent and child and normal parking spaces. If there are 21 parent and child spaces, how many spaces are there in the entire car park? So again, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the labelling of each of these particular things. So I'm going to call disabled D, parent and child is PC, and we'll call normal N. So in terms of this then, we've got D, we've got PC, and we've got N, and the ratio is given as to 2 to 3 to 20. Now in case of what we're looking at here, so I know that the disabled is 2 parts, the parent and child is 3 parts, and the normal is going to be 20. So looking at this then, and we know that there are 21 parent and child. So here that's going to be 21, and I don't know what these two values here are going to be. So I know from this that 3 parts equals 21 spaces. So therefore, 1 part is going to equal 7. Because again, all I've done there is just divided it by 3. And where's 3 come from? By the number of parts. So if 1 part is going to be 7, then the disabled is going to be 2 times 7, which is 14. I know that the parent and child is already 21. And I know that the normal or the regular parking spaces are going to be 20 times 7, which is going to be 140. Now the question here, it says how many spaces are there in the entire car park? So what I therefore then need to work out is the total number of spaces. And how do I do that? Well, I do that by adding the numbers up. So here I've got 4 plus 1, which is 5, 1 plus 2, which is 3, plus 4, which is 7. So I've got 175 spaces. And there is my final answer. So here I wasn't just asking, or the question wasn't just asking how many normal or how many disabled parking spaces there are. It's actually asking how much the total is. So I kind of have to go backwards compared to the previous video on sharing an amount using a ratio. So let's have a look at the next example. So it says here that Otis and Mandy split their monthly mortgage payments in the ratio of 5 to 7. If Mandy pays 780, how much does she pay more than Otis? So here I'm working out the difference. So what this question is asking me to do is to find the difference in payment between Mandy and Otis. So that's basically what the question is asking me to do, and that's what I need to make sure that when I write down my final answer, that is exactly what I am answering. So again, we start off by labeling our ratio. So here we've got O and M. We've got the ratio of 5 to 7, and I know that Mandy pays 780. So from this, what we then need to do is work out what Otis pays. So here, if 7 parts equals 780, then 1 part is going to be 780 divided by 7, which I don't think is going to be a very nice number, and it isn't, and that comes out to be £111 and 43 pence to the nearest pence. Not the nicest, but we make do. And that there has been rounded to 2 decimal places, or in other words, to the nearest pence. So again, what we need to do then is work out the difference. Well, we still haven't worked out how much Otis pays. So then, therefore, Otis, if I can spell his name correctly, which clearly I cannot. So Otis pays, and it's going to be 5 times 111.43. And again, if I type that into my calculator, times 5 gives me an answer of £557. And let me just make sure that I'm typing this in correctly in terms of rounding. And oh no, mistyped it into the calculator. There we go, £557 and 15 pence. So again, need to go back to the question. So although it seems like I've answered the question, I need to work out what the difference is. So therefore, that the difference between the two prices is going to be 780 minus 557.15. And again, typing that into my calculator, I get the answer of £222 and 85 pence. And there is my final answer. So it is important that you set your working out. Now this question, if you were to given it in an exam, would be worth several marks. You'd get 1 mark initially for working out the value of 1 part, maybe a mark here for setting your work out. You'd get 1 mark for working out how much Otis pays, 1 mark for recognising you've got to work out the difference, and then 1 mark for your final answer, paying attention to your rounding, which again should be to 2 decimal places because you're dealing with money. So let's finally look at the last question. So here this question says that Charlotte and Becky deliver pizzas in the ratio of 3 to 5. If Becky delivers 6 more pizzas than Charlotte, how many pizzas do they each deliver? Now this again question is a little bit tricky in terms of the wording and what it is that we're actually trying to find. So here if I start by writing C and B, and they've got a ratio of 3 to 5. Now what's given, it hasn't actually told me how many pizzas Becky delivers. All it tells me is that she delivers 6 more. Now if we look at the difference in the pizzas equals 6, and then we look at the difference in parts. So if we look at the difference between the two parts of 5 and 3, that we know that here we've got the difference of 2 parts. So what that means then, so that means that 2 parts equals 6 pizzas, which also therefore means that 1 part is going to equal 3 pizzas. So now that we know the value of 1 part, we can now work out how many pizzas they each delivered. So here Charlotte delivered 3 parts, so we times that by 3, and that's going to be 9 pizzas. And if I multiply Becky's by 3, and that then becomes 15 pizzas. So in terms of answering the question, again, even though that we have technically worked it out, what we want to try and do is make sure that we're making it really obvious what the answer is. So here, Charlotte delivers 9 pizzas and Becky delivers 15 pizzas. And there is our final answer. So like I said, these questions are slightly worded very, very different to questions where you're sharing a total amount. It's important that you read the question carefully to decide what type of ratio question it's going to be. Under no circumstances in a ratio question will it make it perfectly obvious what it is you need to find. So all it does, it just takes a bit of practice and practice of each of those 5 main areas of ratios to get your understanding about how questions are generally written based on the topic. Now there will be a worksheet for you to practice in the description below, ready for you to download, and also I will include the answers to them as well.